Welcome to my tutorial of Stinger for the NES. This is a pretty simple shooter. It's not too difficult. It only took me around 1 hour and 40 minutes to beat. So it's a pretty simple game. One thing about this game is that most of the enemies have the same patterns every time you see them, so it's a very easy game to predict overall. And I found a exploit for the final boss that makes it, effortless to beat, so I'll show that at the end as well. So basically you have firing on both of your buttons, A and B. And in these horizontal stages, you fire forward and you fire these hearts up where you can kind of juggle these ball sack power-ups until they turn blue. So you can get some blue balls and that'll give you a speed increase. And you can juggle those ball sacks with either the upper fire or the horizontal fire. It doesn't matter which one. As long as you're hitting it, you'll juggle it, and the more you juggle it, you'll change it to different colors. So the blue ones will give you a speed boost, which is actually really useful. Now, if you die, you can try to retrieve your power-ups by capturing your ghost. If you're low enough on the screen when you die, you'll have enough room to try to reach the ghost before it goes off screen. So if you're going to die, you want to die near the bottom of the screen, but it's not like you're trying to really plan for it too much. But the flashing white ball sack is one of the best ones because that one will give you a shield and a wide shot. So I think on the horizontal stages it gives you a double shot. It's maybe not the wide shot on the horizontal stages, but either way it's one of the best power-ups that you can get. The pink one is also good. That's a laser that does a lot of damage. But I rarely got that one. I usually like the flashing white the best. And getting a few speeds is always useful to keep your speed up. The pink one gives you the laser, as you can see. So usually when you see the enemies, they have these predetermined patterns that they always pretty much do the same type of movements whenever they appear. So once you learn you'll learn by seeing the enemy sprite, you'll know exactly how it's going to move after a while. So you'll see where they're positioned on screen, and then you'll know their movement pattern. Like these donuts always kind of swirl around in a loop like that, and they always do the same shit. So for the most part, the game is extremely predictable just by seeing the sprites that show up. You'll be able to predict most of the movements that way. It can still be a little challenging at times, but it never gets too difficult. But yeah, there's a lot of different little power-ups. I think one of them may even be brief invincibility, but I rarely ever got that one. I think I got it there a few seconds ago. But the flashing white one is the best one to get, and maybe a blue one for speed. Now this one is really good too, but I was never sure which power-up that was to get the triple clones. I think I only got that once. It's probably the most powerful to have 3 of these things with the laser, but I wasn't even sure how I got all that. I mean, I know how I got the laser with the pink power-up, but the triple, I'm not sure how to get that. But if you shoot these little things, they will give you different power-ups depending on the color it is when you collect it. You have unlimited continues in this game, and when you lose your 3 lives, you get sent back to the beginning of the stage to continue. You can earn an extra life occasionally on points, but I didn't get that to happen too often. Whenever a boss is about to appear, you cannot pause the game for some reason. So if you're saving state to practice the bosses, make sure you do it a little bit early on an emulator. I always recommend using save state to practice bosses if they're challenging bosses. Most of these bosses, you don't really need to do that. Most of them are super easy. The third boss is tough, though. The third boss is a little tricky, so you may want to practice that a little bit. So this is the first overhead stage. There's I believe 3 overhead stages, in the game, out of the 7 stages. Most of them are horizontal. And this is the same type of thing, based on the way the enemy looks, it's going to move a certain way. Now, some of the enemies are a little bit more unpredictable, but eventually you'll memorize the stage because they'll always move the same when they appear at that part, at that time period within the stage, they're going to move the same. So you can also memorize that as well. But when you see these squids, you know they're going to kind of, squirm around up and down a little bit. So just, stay away from them. Keep space from the enemies. Because the hitbox is not too lenient in this game, and you get killed pretty easily. When it seems like you shouldn't have got hit sometimes. And sometimes your bullets and shit will go through enemies. So it's not always the most reliable shooter. So what I try to do is I try to keep an extra distance away from the enemy so that they don't, shit out a bullet right on top of my position and kill me. So, that combined with, having an idea of how the enemies are going to react when you see them on screen, they're going to move a certain way. Because they pretty much always do the same movements. They may just appear at different parts of the screen, but they will move the same pretty much. So that's really all you need to know. And, you have 3 lives each time to try to get through a stage before you, if you use a continue after that, you can continue at the next stage. The hardest stage is the next stage I found. I found the 3rd stage to be the toughest, but, even that is not that difficult. But it may take you some tries. So now this is another easy boss fight coming up. And for this boss, all you really have to focus on is staying near the bottom of the screen and just, keep shooting at it to try to get rid of those rods below it, because those rods will turn into spears, basically, that will kill you. So you want to try to shoot them out before they form into spears. But aside from that, just keep firing. I don't think I even had any power-ups, and I killed that thing very easily by staying, just continually firing. I have rapid fire set to both buttons as well, which probably helps. So this is the hardest stage that I found. But it's the same principle. All the enemies behave the same when you see them. So you see there's a little edit here, starting the stage over. Because I wasted a continue. So, but it's the same principle for this stage. Like these red enemies, they're always going to move in an up and down pattern, the same way each time. The saws kind of move at a diagonal angle, and they come from different parts of the screen. So you just got to keep an eye where the enemies are coming from, but they're all going to move in the same way. See, these swirly things always do the same shit as well. It's all the same, pretty much. So the shoes can be a little tricky because they kind of cover a lot of the area of the screen since they're spread out pretty wide, so they can be tricky sometimes, but it's the same shit every time you see them. Now these guys, it's good to get underneath them. If you can't kill them all, you want to kind of go underneath them and circle around them. And, the shoes, you want to try to clear out as many as you can. But if you can't, you want to just get away from them. I found staying near the bottom half of the screen was safer a lot of times. But you still got to watch out for those statues. Because you can only kill the statues and the sunglass faces by bombing them with the little bomb that comes out. You can't shoot them with the regular shot. So they can sometimes sneak up and, a bullet may blend into the background and kill you if you're not watching out for it. But you can see all these patterns are the same whenever these groups of enemies show up. Now these scissor things, they always circle around. It's good to try to get underneath them if you can and circle around them. Or get above them and circle around them, either way. I usually try to shoot them all out. If I can kill most of them, then they're not too bad. But if you're unable to hit them, then you want to try to circle around them. Now see, I got the white power up here, which is really good. You want to try to get that white power up, that white fucking ball sack if you can. Because it'll give you a double shot. And I was able to get my ghost and retrieve the power up back after I died, so that was good. But you want to try to bring that to the boss. Because the boss, if you have that extra firepower, you can take out its projectiles a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to beat the boss. I mean, it's not required, but it will help. And you see these hangers just move across the screen and shoot bullets. They all do the same shit. And yeah, soon the boss will come up, and for that, you're pretty much just going to follow its movement and shoot it as you're following it, staying in the back of the screen, which I'll explain. You'll see it. You can see this goes on for a while. That's the main thing. I mean, it's all easy patterns and shit, but it goes on for a long time. So, you could drain your lives pretty easily. But once you get used to the patterns of all the various enemies, it's pretty fucking easy. So for this guy, I try to follow him, and I try to shoot out the projectiles right from that little spout and try to get as many of them as I can. The more of those you can clear out, the easier it is to dodge. The hitbox is really unforgiving, especially on this fight. And sometimes I would die from projectiles that were invisible, meaning my ship just exploded out of nowhere. And that was probably because this boss exceeds the sprite limit and some of the projectiles get hidden, but they'll still kill you. So you may die for no apparent reason. But that is the general, strategy I use, is just following it and firing at it, trying to destroy the projectiles as I move with it, staying in the back. You may want to practice that boss with save and load stages to make sure you have it down, because the stage is a little long. But it's really not that difficult. This stage is a little tricky. I mean, it's the same thing with the enemies following, similar patterns every time they appear, but the waves can appear back-to-back pretty quickly, so you don't always have a lot of time to recover from the last wave. So you have to adapt a little quicker on this stage. But I still found all the other stages easier than that third stage, so if you completed that, then you shouldn't have much trouble completing the game. Really, the main reason for making this tutorial is just to explain the little last boss exploit, which, makes the last boss easy. Otherwise, it can be a pain in the ass because it follows you. And especially if you don't have a speed power-up, it can be extremely difficult, it seems. But I found a very easy trick for that. That means that all you have to worry about is getting to the boss. And as long as you get to the boss, you'll beat it. It's very fucking easy with the trick that I found. So that should make it an easy game for the kill list. I found this game randomly, but it's a decent game. It's not great. The hit detection is a little fucked up, and there's not really a lot of variety. I mean, it's a very predictable game. Once you know how it works, the enemies pretty much do the same shit every time they appear. It's not like a better shooter, which would have enemies moving in all different patterns where you really have to memorize the level. In this, you mainly just have to memorize enemy patterns. So whenever you see an enemy, you know it's going to do that pattern. You just got to judge how to move based on where it's located on the screen, where it comes from, and what's going to come next after. Because, if you're not prepared, you may get hit by the next wave that shows up. But the patterns are all the same, pretty much. So for this guy, you just want to go in a circle and shoot at him when you have a chance, and that's it. And I don't even think you need a speed power-up for this guy. I think you can just, it would help to have a speed power-up if you could have grabbed the blue ball for some speed, but you don't need it for this. So you just got to circle around and shoot. It's a super easy boss. The stage is a lot harder than that boss. I think I may have died on that boss. Lost to continue on that boss once or twice or something, but it was easy as hell. So this stage gets a little bit more challenging, possibly. I mean, I believe it moves faster with enemies spawning on your ass a lot faster. It's the same thing with enemies having the same patterns based on the enemy type. They all pretty much maintain the same patterns. But you have a few new enemies here that move a little differently, but it's still all based on the pattern of the enemy type. It's just that in this stage they come out a lot faster back to back, so you don't have as much time to reposition yourself after clearing out a wave of enemies. And I would recommend trying to stay as far away from the enemies as possible while clearing them out. Because you don't want to be close to the enemy because they'll shit out bullets right on top of your position. You don't always see them because the backgrounds match, especially your ship blends into the background at points. And it makes it hard to see shit. So I prefer to just try to get away from the enemies and just kill, clear out some of them and just get away from them. I like to stay in the middle of the screen and kind of circle around the middle to dodge shit and kill shit, because if you go all the way down to the bottom of the screen, enemies will sometimes spawn out of the bottom of the screen, so it's not really a safe place to hang out. But yeah, it's pretty much going to be the same shit throughout the entire stage. To hit the enemies on the ground, you use your I think it's your shot with A. It's like a reticle that appears on the ground. I set both buttons to rapid fire, so if I was in the right vicinity to use it, it would just automatically take the guy out. But I didn't really focus on taking those guys out too much. I just kept an eye on them because they will shit out bullets, so you want to keep an eye on what they're doing. Now this stage, it's pretty easy because you got 3 lives to get through it, so it's not going to be that bad. And then you got a very easy boss fight at the end. It's a boss fight where you basically just stay at the bottom of the screen again. And all you got to worry about is just shooting this thing, staying at the bottom of the screen. You don't even need any power-ups for this fight. And you want to shoot the notes if possible. If they're in your way, just shoot out the notes that are in your way, but just keep moving a little bit left to right. And just stay at the very bottom. And it doesn't take that long for it to die this way. Yeah, and that's it for that boss. Now, coming up next, you have the semi-final stage. And it can be a little challenging. I think this is the most aggressive stage. So, you could say it is the most difficult stage, actually. But for me, it wasn't, because I ended up getting a flashing white ball sack power-up, which gave me a shield and a spread shot. So if you can get that, I recommend getting that for this stage. See, I just picked it up there. And that's extremely useful for this stage, because you can take a few hits with the shield, I believe. And you have a spread shot, so you can clear out enemies a lot more effectively. So I recommend getting that, and maybe get a speed up if you can, which is the blue fucking ball sack. And basically, those little things, when you juggle them, they take, they seem to randomly change colors, so it doesn't seem predictable. But if you see it turn blue, stop shooting it and let it drop down onto your ship so you can get the power up. It's a little tricky to try to plan out. But if you can, try to get the flashing white, because it's going to make this level a lot easier. Without that, it can be a lot harder, I'm sure. It may be the hardest stage without a good power-up. But for me, the third stage gave me the most trouble, because I didn't have this power-up, I believe, on the third stage. But this is probably the most aggressive stage, harder than even the final stage, which is really not that hard at all. So this is probably the hardest stage, I would say. You can see it's aggressive. The enemies come out a lot faster and more aggressively, so you do have to be more careful. But the whole game follows that single theme of specific enemies having specific movement patterns. It's a little trickier here, though, because you have a lot of enemies that don't follow a clear pattern. As far as some of them just kind of feel like they're sparsely located on the screen, and they just come out, kind of come out of nowhere. But I believe there is a pattern to that as well. They have similar spacing when they come out and shoot. It's not really that much different, but it happens fast, so you just have to adapt to everything quickly. Same general strategy I use of kind of staying in the middle of the screen and circling around the middle area to try to clear things out and dodge shit. I also just try to stay as far away from enemies and bullets as I can, because the hitbox is a little weird. See, I probably took a bullet there, but I'm not sure. But it gets kind of messy. If you have this power-up, the boss is extremely easy as well. But the boss may be tough if you get there without the power-up. So I really recommend trying to get that flashing white power-up if you can for this stage. It'd probably make things a lot more manageable. I don't know if my strategy that I used on this boss will work without any power-ups, because I didn't try it. Most of the bosses are easy to take out without any power-ups, but this one might be tricky. I'm not sure. But yeah, once you get to this space area, it does get pretty aggressive, but after a while, then you'll be on the semi-final boss. What I like to do for this boss is stay at the bottom of the screen yet again. And I take some shots at it, and then I move towards the bottom left of the screen. So I'll take some shots at it to clear out some of the fire that it shoots out. And as it gets close to me, I move to the bottom, kind of a down left. I move diagonally down left as it moves towards me. And then I just, I continually, keep firing on it. And it doesn't take too long to kill if you have this power up. Rapid fire may also speed things up a little bit too, so keep that in mind. I am using rapid fire. I pretty much always use that shit for games where it's effective. So this is the final stage, and it's a pretty easy stage. It's pretty easy stage to read if you have been reading patterns, as I said this whole time, of enemies. Now these enemies are new, but once you see the way they move, you're going to understand it, and you'll be ready for it. The main thing to prepare for in this stage is that there's these little red sun enemies that come out from behind you to try to home in on your position. And you got to be kind of low on the screen and ready to kind of circle back around them, which I'll try to show. I'm sure I'll end up showing it here. These guys are a little tricky too because they kind of swarm you. But see these red suns? I didn't do it right here because I wasn't positioned right. Those other enemies were fucking up my positioning, and I was too high up on the screen to do it. I mean, you can circle around from the bottom, too, to get away from those guys. But I usually try to circle up around the top and circle around them and then come back around and shoot them and clear them out is what I usually try to do with those sun enemies. But once you get used to dealing with those guys in groups, it's pretty easy because they're always the same each time they show up. The only problem is that sometimes they'll blindside you if you're dealing, you're not killing the other enemies fast enough. Or you're not in a good position, they will kind of show up at a bad time. And you may get killed because of that. But you have 3 lives to get through this whole area, this whole final stage. And you shouldn't die at all on the boss once you see what I show you to do on the boss. I found an exploit that means you really don't have to fight it normally at all. All you have to do is get in a certain position as soon as the fight starts. That's all you have to worry about, and then the boss will basically just die. So you'll see that. It does go on for a while, so you do have to survive for a while, but you have 3 lives to survive all this shit, so it's really not that bad. Now, if you had to fight the boss normally, it could be kind of tough. Especially if you didn't have any speed power-ups, it seems very hard without those. But with this positioning trick I'm going to show you, you should be able to beat it the first time you get to it. I actually did fuck up with this technique once and had to start the stage over because I was positioned a little bit too high. The hitboxes are not that forgiving in this game. But as long as you stay in the center and position yourself inside the ring of this final boss, and you'll see what I mean. As soon as it appears, watch where I position myself. I get right in the middle here and try to stay right in the center, and that's it. Once you do that, you've pretty much beaten the boss. You just got to continuously fire until it dies. I haven't seen this trick done before. It was something I found when I was fucking around with save and load state practice. So this makes the final boss pretty much, a non-issue. You won't have to deal with it at all, basically. So you do this shit, and you just do this for a little while, and then you'll beat the game. So yeah, this should be an easy game to beat, especially with this tutorial. It should save a lot of time. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.